Now let's get into the actual debate. I'm going to show you guys all my notes since I wasn't able to show all my notes in the debate due to both time and technical difficulties. So, with that being said, buckle your seatbelt and enjoy the ride because it's going to be a long one. So, first, we're going to talk about botany. Now, when we're talking about corn or maize, that's an American plant, and I proved that it's mentioned in scripture. Now, a lot of times the English word for corn simply means some type of cereal grain. And while this is true, a lot of times in scripture, that specific cereal grain can be identified as American maize. And let me explain. In Leviticus 2 and 14, it says, "And if thou offer a meat offering of thy first fruits unto Yahuwah, thou shalt offer for the meat offering of thy first fruits green ears of corn dried by the fire, even corn beaten out of full ears." Now, what's important to understand is that the Hebrew word for green ears is abib. Abib does not mean green ears because the word green is yarek, which is not found in the Hebrew text of this verse. So Abib simply just means harvest or ears, basically indicating a mature harvest. So mature ears of wheat or barley are already dry, and drying them by fire would be unnecessary. The only type of grain that is not dry when it's mature is American maize. And American maize, when it's mature, does need to be dried by fire if you want to offer it up as an offering. Simply because if you were to offer up maize as a burnt offering, it would not burn that easily because it's full of juice. Any type of grain would burn very easily, but not American maize. Therefore, it had to be dried by fire. Now, what's also important about this verse, it says, even corn beaten out of full ears. So this shows that this type of corn had to be without blemish, meaning that the cob of corn had to be full of corn. There could not be any patches. Anybody who has grown corn knows that if the corn does not develop properly, there will be a lot of missing patches in the corn. So Yah says he wants a perfect ear of corn that has full ears, meaning there should be no kernels missing. And maize is pretty much the only type of cereal grain that would have kernels missing. If we're talking about a smaller type of cereal grain, like wheat, for example, y'all would not have said even corn beaten out of full ears because wheat is so small that just by looking at it, it will be difficult to say, okay, this piece of wheat is not a full ear, and therefore I cannot offer it up to Yah. Especially considering the fact that wheat seeds are hidden away within their husks. So just by looking at it, it will be almost impossible to tell which heads of wheat are missing their kernels. However, corn cobs would be completely obvious to tell which ones are missing their kernels because there is no husk covering every single individual seed. That would be an extremely laborious and tedious task of going through each and every individual ear of wheat and taking out some that are missing kernels. However, when it comes to cobs of corn, the job would have been a lot easier. And let me just point out that ears of wheat often are not missing kernels, and they're almost always full ears. And then when we go to the book of Job, chapter 24 and verse 24, it says, "They are exalted for a little while, but are gone and brought low. They are taken out of the way as all other, and are cut off as the tops of ears of corn." When it comes to American maize, they are often missing the kernels at the tip. This could be because of poor pollination or because bugs got to it, and that's the only part that they could reach. So for safe measures, before selling the corn, people in ancient times as well as people today cut off the tip of the corn so that the buyer and consumer will be more satisfied with the corn that they purchased. When you harvest wheat, there's no need to cut off the top of the ear. You will simply beat the kernels from the stalk. There is no need to go through all the tedious work to cut off the tip. American maize did not grow in Africa before colonization, and neither did it ever grow in the Kalahari Desert. Quick side note here, guys. Have you guys noticed that the colors of corn in their natural state directly correlates to the Levitical colors? It's got the red, it's got the blue, it's got the purple, it's even got the yellow, which is gold, it's got the orange, which is copper. These are the colors of the ephod, these are the colors of the tabernacle, the colors of the priestly robe. These are the holy colors. Now, when we're talking about the pine tree, the fir tree, the chestnut tree, and the oak tree, which are all mentioned in scripture, as you can see, the scriptures are on the screen. I'm going to save time by not reading them all verbatim. They're on the screen. You will see that pine trees, for example, all live in the northern hemisphere. Pine trees do not grow anywhere south of the equator. As you can see, the title of this map is Range of Pinus, which is the genus of pine trees. Now, when it comes to the distribution of fir trees, simple research will let you know that they only live in North and Central America, Europe, Asia, and Northern Africa. So they don't grow in the Southern Hemisphere, only the Northern Hemisphere. Okay, they don't grow south of the equator. So when we're talking Africa, they only grow in Northern Africa, north of the Sahara, on that brim of Africa that borders the Mediterranean. That's the only part of Africa that you can find fir trees. When we go into chestnut trees, the chestnuts are the deciduous trees and shrubs in the genus Castanea in the beech family Fagaceae. They are native to temperate regions of the northern hemisphere. So as you can see in this image, this is where chestnut trees live. As you can see, they are basically not found in Africa at all. They're found in every continent except for Africa. Now, when we're talking about oak trees, this is where oak trees live, okay? And they don't grow south of the equator except for in a small part of, Indonesia. But in Africa, you cannot find oak trees unless we're talking Morocco, Mauritania, Tunisia, northern Libya region. That's the only part, again, on the brim of Africa, bordering the Mediterranean. That's the only part where you can find oak trees. But look where you can find oak trees in the Americas. Western North America and Eastern North America, as well as Central America. Here's a more detailed distribution map of oaks. Now let's get into some zoology. We were just in botany, the study of plants. Now let's touch up on some zoology, which is the study of animals. So first, let's look at some mistranslations that could be found both in the Septuagint as well as the King James Version. We have to go into the Hebrew text if we want to see the most accurate meanings of these words. I don't stick to a specific translation. You don't see me sit up here telling you this is the right translation. This is the translation you should use, blah, blah, blah. You see me in all my videos going back to the Hebrew text, because that is the only thing that we should be drawing conclusions from. We should not be drawing conclusions from translations. So when we're talking about mistranslations, let's look at the unicorn. Okay, so the unicorn, okay, the Hebrew word for unicorn is ra'am. But translators of the Septuagint had no clue what a ra'am was specifically, so they translated it as monoceros. a Greek mythological horse-like creature known for having one horn and great strength. But we know this is a mistranslation because the Hebrew text is trying to describe something that is real and not mythological. The Hebrew word Ra'am comes from the word Ramah, which means high or tall. So the first thing we know about the Ra'am is that it's tall. Numbers chapter 23, verse 22. God brought them out of Mizraim. He hath, as it were, the strength of an unicorn, the strength of a Ra'am. Deuteronomy 33 and 17. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them shall he push the people together to the ends of the earth. So, the horns of a unicorn are perhaps able to push things. Psalms 92 and 10. But my horn thou shalt exalt like the horn of a unicorn. Okay, so exalt means to lift up. So the unicorn's horns must lift up. So what do we know about the Hebrew Ra'am? We know that it's tall because the Hebrew comes from a root which means tall or lifted up. We know that it's strong because scripture says the strength of a unicorn. And we know that its horns are perhaps meant to push and not specifically to pierce, because most animals that are horned have pointy horns that are meant to pierce and simply to pierce and nothing else. When people see the unicorn in scripture, they identify it with a rhinoceros, okay? And that cannot be any further from the truth. The issue with the rhinoceros is that it is not particularly known for its height, and its horns are specifically designed for piercing and would be very ineffective at pushing. So when you see a rhino, you see that he has two very sharp horns coming out of his nose. A rhino's horns cannot push anything. If a rhino tries to push you with his horns, he's going to kill you. It'll go right through you. So this animal has to have horns that are designed to push. It also has to be a very tall animal. So which animal matches this completely? And before you say something like the giraffe, well, giraffes don't have horns. They have bony ossicones coming out of their head, which is a part of their skull, and they do not push. Their purpose is for fighting each other. That's it. What is the only animal on the entire planet Earth that fits this description? The moose. The moose is the tallest horned animal in the world. A moose can get up to 7'6" tall. The average moose is 6'11" at the shoulder, but when you count the antlers, they can get up to 7'6". The moose is so strong that it can run through river currents that will kill a human. Have you ever heard of a person going into river currents and getting taken away by the river and dying because they were not strong enough to fight the river current? Guess what? A moose can run through that like butter. Have you seen a moose in action? These things are extremely strong. Now let's look at a moose's horns or his antlers. And as you can see, they are meant and designed for pushing. And as you can see, that's what they use them for in nature, to push. They can pierce. It's a possibility, but they're meant and designed specifically for pushing. Now, when it comes to the ostrich, this is a very important one because obviously ostriches do not live in North America at all. But let me tell you something. The ostrich is only mentioned twice in scripture and was translated from different Hebrew words both times. So in Job chapter 39, verse 13, it says, "Gavest thou the goodly wings unto the peacocks? Also, the word peacock here is another mistranslation because the real word for peacock in the Hebrew text is tuki, but the word here is alos, which means rejoicing. So this must be some type of dancing bird of North America, probably the sandhill crane, which stretches out its wings and performs a mating dance. Or wings and feathers unto the ostrich. The Hebrew word there is notsah. Lamentations 4 and 3. Even the sea monsters draw out the breast. They give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people is become cruel, like the ostriches in the wilderness. Now, the word ostrich here is yain. So that's a different word from notsah. Neither of these animals can be an actual ostrich because notsah means to fly or lift up. It comes from the Hebrew root nasah, which means to lift up. Okay. Ostriches cannot fly. It's very simple. And it cannot be the yayin because of context. Okay. Ostriches are not cruel to their children. Ostriches are some of the best parents in the bird kingdom. Now let's talk about the camel leopard, which is found in the Septuagint. Okay. The camel leopard. When we read the Septuagint, Deuteronomy 14 and 5, it says the stag and the doe, the pygarg and the wild goat, and the camel leopard. Now, if you Google camel leopard, that's a giraffe. Okay. Giraffes could be found all throughout Egypt, which is why the Septuagint used that word, because they had no idea what a zamar is. Okay. It's translated from the Hebrew word zamar, which comes from a root that means to prune. So it means to prune. And it's a type of gazelle, according to the scholars. And it says that its feet lightly touch the ground when we're looking at the etymological context. But it basically comes from the primitive root, zamar, to trim or to prune. Now, what does it mean to prune something? That means when you're growing a tree, a fruit tree, you got to cut the leaves off so it can make more fruit. So that the tree can realize I'm not going to keep putting my energy into making leaves. I'm going to put my energy into producing fruit. So what do you use to prune your plants? What do you use to prune your fruit trees? Use a pruning hook. So what does a pruning hook look like? A pruning hook looks like this. Like this. Like the horns of a pronghorn gazelle. The pronghorn gazelle is also the fastest herbivore on Earth, running at speeds up to 60 miles per hour. Extremely light on his feet. Now, where do pronghorn gazelles live? Western North America. So let's talk about the leopard. One of my favorite and most undeniable pieces of evidence when it comes to the zoology that the Holy Land is truly in the Americas. Because the leopard is an African animal, as we know. But again, the translators had to use an animal that they knew of. Let me just put it to you like this. The leopard should be the jaguar, which is an American animal. But the translators had absolutely no clue what a jaguar is. So therefore, they could only use the word leopard. But when we go into the Hebrew, we'll see that the Hebrew text is describing an American jaguar and not the African leopard. So let's use some Hebrew context. The Hebrew word for leopard, namar, indicates that it's a semi-aquatic animal. And why do I say that? Namur comes from a word that means filtrate, dripping with water. It comes from the root nimra, which means clear water. So whatever animal this is has to enjoy, a lot of time in the water. Also, Jeremiah 13 and 23. Can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? So the leopard has spots. So we know it's an animal with spots. Okay. Now, Song of Solomon 4, verse 8. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse. With me from Lebanon. Look at the top of Amana, from the top of Shinir and Hermon, from the lion's dens, from the mountains of the leopards. Also, the leopards of the scriptures, or the Namar of the scripture, they live in the mountains. Okay? They live in a mountainous environment. But then when we get into Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 8, it says, their horses are swifter than the leopards. Their horses are swifter than the leopards. So that means the leopards must be known for their speed. They must be an extremely fast animal. Okay? So what do we know about the Namar? It spends a lot of time in the water. It has spots. It lives in the mountains, and it's very fast. Now, what do we know about the African leopard? The African leopard is good at swimming, but it will avoid it if possible. Yeah, you can research this. They'll drink it, but they won't get inside of it. Why not? Because everywhere in Africa that the leopard lives, which is the savanna regions, when you have water in the savanna, what else do you have in the water? You have hippopotamus, you have crocodiles, you have things that will easily kill a leopard. You will never catch a leopard swimming in the savanna waters of Africa. Not for fun. If he's trying to escape something, he will. But he's not going to just sit there and have fun inside of the water. Okay. Also, we know that the African leopards have spots. Yes, they do. So that matches scripture. We know that the African leopard sometimes climbs mountains, but it prefers the savanna. Okay. That's also a fact. And we also know that the African leopard is one of the slowest big cats on earth. The slowest amongst the slowest big cats, with an average speed of 36 miles per hour. In fact, I think the leopard might be the slowest big cat. If you can find a big cat slower than a leopard, put it in the comments. But as somebody like me who's studied zoology extensively, I have not found any big cats that are slower than 36 miles per hour. The African leopard is pretty slow because they're ambush predators. They climb trees, and at the canopy of the tree, they look very far through the savanna. They have very good eyes. And if they see a herd of animals in the distance, they climb down the tree and get in the grass and wait for the herd of animals. They wait for them to come by the tree looking for shade. Then once they came by the tree, they jump. They don't chase their prey. You rarely see a African leopard chasing their prey. They simply jump up and attack their prey when their prey least expects it. They have camouflage to blend in with the grass. So that's why they're extremely slow. Now, what we know about the American jaguar is a lot of the very opposite of what we can find with the African leopard. It actually is the most water-loving cat. If you don't believe me, you can research this yourself. Naturally, they can be found in some of the tributaries of the Colorado River. They can be found in certain rivers of Mexico and small parts of the Rio Grande. They can be found in the rivers of western Mexico and all the way down into the swamps of Panama and even the Amazon River. You will see the American jaguar just spends time in the water. They're very great swimmers, and they literally hunt caimans, which is a small type of alligator crocodile creature that can be found in South America. Also, American jaguars have the strongest bite force out of every cat on earth. So this is not the type of animal that you want to run into, okay? But they're also a very elusive animal, so they're not easy to run into. They could only be found hanging out in the mountains at a certain part of the night. And in the heat of the day, they're found in the rivers and streams closest to the mountains as possible. Okay, so you're not gonna run into them that much. And if you do, they probably want to attack you because they prefer to eat things like fish and other things that can be found near the rivers. Also, we know that the American jaguar has spots. Okay, so that matches scripture too. And we know that the American jaguar prefers mountainous regions except for the Amazon. Also, it's one of the fastest of the big cats, coming only after the cheetah. Okay, average speed 50 miles per hour. That's extremely fast when you consider the body weight of the jaguar. The jaguar is huge. Now, additional notes that I want to point out: all horses are faster than leopards. Every horse is faster than African leopard, but only a few are faster than jaguars, as the average speed of a horse is 44 miles per hour. Now, this is a fact. But let's go back up to this scripture. Their horses are swifter than the leopards. If we're talking about an African leopard, that would not be a flex, because all horses are faster than African leopards. That's like me saying, "Oh my gosh, that dog is faster than a turtle." Of course the dog is faster than a turtle. Turtles are slow. So to say that that horse is faster than an African leopard, that's not a flex, because all horses are faster than African leopards in general. However, when we compare that to the American jaguar, not that many horses are faster than American jaguars. As we know, the American jaguar is 50 miles per hour. The average speed of a horse is 44 miles per hour. So if you have a horse that is faster than the American jaguar, guess what? That's a flex. You understand? So now the scripture makes sense when we apply it to an American animal. Look at this. Let's look at the weight difference. The jaguar is 36 to 158 kilograms. And the leopard is 17 to 90 kilograms. So a jaguar will kill a leopard very easily. And the gift of the jaguar is they're aquatically inclined, meaning they are very, very great swimmers and they enjoy swimming. It's actually their hobby, because they don't like the heat too much. Because first of all, jaguars can be found in some of the hottest places on earth. Parts of Arizona and New Mexico, right on the equator in Ecuador, right in Panama and throughout Mexico, aquatically inclined. However, when we're talking about the leopard, which also lives in the hottest places of Africa, they get their shade from the heat, not by going into water, but by going into the trees. So both of these animals, they live in hot areas and they want to keep cool, but they do it in different ways. And it's very interesting when you think about the way that the American jaguar, beats the heat. It matches what the Hebrew text says. They filtrate, they drip clear water. They like to live in clear water. Now let's look at this. This is the jaguar habitat in Arizona and New Mexico. They live in the mountains of this area even to this day. And as you see the rivers, the certain tributaries of the rivers, they can be found all throughout the rivers and in the rivers. So now let us look at some correct translations. The African lion is not the biblical lion. I repeat, the African lion is not the biblical lion. And I don't have to go into the Hebrew or anything. Just look at the context of the lion and see. Amos chapter 3, verse 4. Will a lion roar in the forest when he have no prey? Will a young lion cry out of his den if he have taken nothing? So the biblical lion lives in the forest and they live in dens. And on top of that, they hunt in the forest. That's very important to understand. And that means that the animals that they eat are also forest animals. That's very important to understand. Psalms chapter 10, verse 9. He lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den. Okay, now a lion in his den. Okay, den. Nahum chapter 2, verse 12. The lion did tear in pieces enough for his whelps and strangled for his lionesses. So that's very important because it says the lion hunts for his cubs and for his lioness. So what do we know about the biblical lion? The biblical lion lives in the forest. It lives in dens, and the males hunt for the females and cubs. That's the biblical lion. That's right there out of the scripture. I'm not making any of this up. So what do we know about the African lion? We know that the African lion lives in the grasslands. It does not live in the forest at all. And them being called the king of the jungle, that's a misconception because lions are never found in the jungle. The African lion does not live in dens. What are dens? Dens are like caves. Also, the females hunt for the males and the cubs. This is African lions. African lions, the females do all the hunting. The male lion, he gets his woman to hunt for him. So what do we know about the mountain lion of North America? It lives in the forest, just like the biblical lion. It lives in dens with his family, just like the biblical lion. And on top of that, the males and the females both do the hunting. So it's not, just the female hunts. No, the males and the females do the hunting. So with that being said, which lion matches the most? It would have to be the mountain lion. As you see, these are some mountain lions in their dens. So here's the territory of the mountain lion. Western North America. Yeah, the mountain lion may not be as intimidating as the African lion, but trust me, they can do just as much damage, and they are not something you want to mess around with. So let's move on to the bear. The bear is straightforward, okay? So it says, David said, moreover, Yahuwah that deliver me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and Yahuwah be with ye. One thing I want to point out to you is that bears can be found on every single inhabitable continent except for Africa and Australia. And with that being said, with Africa being the continent in question that we're debating on, if that's the Holy Land, it cannot be the Holy Land if no bears can be found therein. Now, the Atlas bear could at one point be found in Mauritania, Morocco, that area over there in North West Africa. However, when we go below the equator and we go into the Kalahari Desert, there has been no evidence of any bear to have ever lived in that area. They have dug up no bear fossils. There's no scientific evidence. There's no oral tradition of any large furry animal that is dangerous, other than, some type of lion or something like that. There is no evidence whatsoever that any bears lived in the Namibia, Botswana, South Africa area at all. Let's just lay that to rest. It's very simple. This is a map of all the bears on Earth, and as you can see, bears live in Western North America, but nowhere in Africa. There is no evidence of bears ever inhabiting the Kalahari Desert. So the swine, right? Because a lot of people, they'll say, well, the white man brought pigs to America, so why is the swine mentioned in scripture? Well, the white man brought pigs to America. That's the key word. Not all swines are pigs. Pigs are the European type of swine. But then we have the Peccari and the Javelina, which are two indigenous American swine species, which are found in Central and South America, and even bleeding on over into Western North America. Their population would have been higher in Western North America when the land was more fertile, but as the land turned more dry and desertous, they migrated south because they're pigs. They like to eat. There's not much to eat out there in the desert. As you can see, they're not too fond of the desert because in Mexico, the middle of Mexico, they don't live there. And when we go into South America, the Atacama Desert, which is in the Andes, they're not found there as well. So they don't like the desert. They like green places. And Western North America used to be green. So it's safe to say that the Pecaris and the Javelinas lived all throughout Western North America at a certain time period. And that's why y'all told us not to eat them. Even though they're in the land, do not eat them because they do not chew the cud. They divide the hoof, but they do not chew the cud. And this is how big they are in comparison to a human. Now let's talk about the deer. This is interesting. No deer species lives in sub-Saharan Africa, but 3 deer species, 3, are mentioned in scripture. And three just so happen to live in Western North America. No, the coincidence. Fallow deer can be found throughout Africa, but they were introduced by Europeans for legal hunting purposes and sport, and are a serious threat, a nuisance to Africa's ecosystem because they are an invasive species. So therefore, they spread like crazy in the area, destroy people's crops and things like that. And, Europeans brought them to Africa. They weren't there originally. But when we look at the native range of deer, as you can see, they live all throughout the Americas, every single part of the Americas, but the only continent where deer cannot naturally be found is Australia and, of course, Africa. Now let's talk about the wolf. The wolf. The wolf is mentioned 7 times in scripture. 7 times. And they only live in the northern hemisphere. So they don't live anywhere south of the equator. In Africa, they can only be found mainly in the Sahara, the Sahel, and the Horn. So if you're not familiar with those terms, here's the Sahara, here's the Sahel, and here's the Horn. And this is the only part of Africa that wolves can be found. They're actually jackals, but I'm not even going to do that to you guys. I'm going to give you guys a little hope. But when we get into the Kalahari Desert, of course, there are none. I'm just saying. Oh, but when we get in Western North America, that's where they live. I'm just saying, that's where they live. That's where wolves are found. This is the gray wolf, for example. Let's look at some domesticated animals. Now, this is extremely important because a lot of people say the Americas lacked domesticated animals, and that's something that the European taught you, because if they teach you that we had domesticated animals, then that destroys what they're trying to do, which is to lie to you. Okay, now let's look at this picture right here. This is a picture, an illustration from the book America, being the latest and most accurate description of the New World, published in 1671. As you can see, the native inhabitants of America had camels, goats, and cattle. So let's look at this. So you see 2 black people, and then you see other black people in the back, and then you see a goat, a cow, and a camel. And it even looks like a woman on top of the cow. And then behind that, we have a marvelous city which resembles Jerusalem of today, which, I don't even want to go into that, but, is there. So, and it says America at the bottom. I don't have to make any of this up. It's in the book. You can go read it. Now, we're talking about the camel. Of course, they're going to lie about the camel and say that the camel went extinct millions of years ago out of the Americas. But why do camels live in areas today that have no cactuses? There's no cacti in Saudi Arabia. There's no cacti in the Sahara. But that's the areas where camels live. And guess what? Camels are the only animal that is adapted to eat cacti. They can bite through the thorns of a cactus and not be harmed. Well, where do cactuses live? Well, cactuses live all throughout the Americas. So why do camels still carry the adaptation to eat an American plant if they haven't lived in the Americas for millions of years? With your evolution and your selective breeding, natural selection, etc., shouldn't they have lost that adaptation by now? Just like humans don't have a thumb on their foot anymore because we don't climb trees anymore. We lost that millions of years ago, right? So with that being said, shouldn't they have lost this adaptation because it would therefore be useless if they're in an environment that do not have these plants? I'm just saying, evolution, please answer my question. But anyway, when we look at this picture right here, I want to focus on this. This is a zoomed in picture of the Camel Trail of Colorado in the mountains of Colorado. It's a petroglyph of a camel on the side of a rock. And then right here, we have a cameloid footprint, which was found in 1999 from the Barstow Formation of Rainbow Basin, California. And also right here, we have a camel foot bone, which was found in the Mojave Desert of California, which is truly the land of Sinai. Probably got there from the Exodus. Who knows? So let's look at the Camel Trail of Colorado again. And it's not just a camel. This is a camel right here, but I have no idea what this is. And then we have a longhorn bull right here. And we're going to get to that. And then we got like something that looks like a calf and a lamed. Call. All. Call means all in Hebrew. Call means all in Hebrew. Like everything. Like everything. Call. So that's the ancient camel petroglyph found on the Camel Trail, Colorado. By the way, Hebrew writing can be found literally everywhere in Western North America. Like it's literally everywhere. I went on my first expedition in California, immediately found them on rocks. It's not that hard to locate all the Hebrew artifacts. You can see it with your own eyes. You might even discover some if you actually go out there and look. You know what I'm saying? Now let's talk about the horse. Horses, just like camels, originate from Western North America. And evidence shows that wild horses of the West were not introduced by the Spaniards. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you why they had to lie about horses, why they had to go so hard to lie about the horses. Guess what animal is mentioned in scripture more than any other animal? Not the lion, not the lamb, the horse. The horse is mentioned in scripture more than any other animal on earth. And the petroglyphs show that horses lived in America. These are pre-Columbian petroglyphs of people on top of horses. Here's a proven pre-Columbian statuette of a horse that was found in Georgia. Here is a 1698 horse painting, and it's next to American Indians. And the name of the painting is Glorification of the Ecclesia Through the Four Continents by Giovanni Battista Ferrandini in the Hohenlohe Church of Germany. And this is a fact. You can look this up. 1698. This is Europeans just now actually settling in North America. Did they already give the Indians their primary weapon of war, the horse? Because you can research. The American Indians had the ability to ride upon a horse without a saddle, going top speed while shooting an arrow with both hands, and getting a perfect bullseye on a target up to 200 yards away. These are recorded facts. They can shoot a person farther than a football field and actually kill that person with perfect aim while traveling full speed on a horse. Can somebody explain how would they master this so quickly if the horse was given by the European to the Indian only a few years before? That's ludicrous. Throw what you've been taught out of the window. Now let's look at the ox. As you can see, the Paleo Hebrew Aleph is an ox head. and it's the same shape horns as the American bison. Now, the bison is the wild ox. The bison would have been the original ox of North America. Now, there's evidence that the bison at one point was a domesticated animal in America. So here's my theory. The American bison was once wild. The people seen it and they domesticated it. And here's the evidence right here. Here's this petroglyph. Here's humans using animals, as you can see right here. A man has like a ram or a sheep in front of him. It looks like it's pulling him on something. And you have all these other people on the side, and you have all these other animals. And then you got this gate of some sort. It looks like the cuttings of a sapling gate is surrounding this ox, surrounding this bison, which to me is a sign of possible domestication. And here's a young bison, as a young bison without blemish and is red, just like it says in Numbers chapter 19 and 12. This is the ordinance of the law which Yahuwah hath commanded, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasrael, that they bring thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. So that's what that is. A red heifer is just a young female ox. And they're red naturally. That's how bisons look. When they domesticated it fully, it developed into what we know today as the longhorn. When you look at the longhorn cattle, you'll notice that most of them have a shade of red somewhere on their body. And if you look at the babies, even more of them have more red on their bodies because they have that same DNA as the American bison. And it's just natural for their babies to come out with red fur. I'm just saying. Now, let me explain something to you. You know, a lot of people say I'm wrong. No, the longhorn was brought from Spain. That's what they'll tell you. They'll tell you that the longhorn was brought from Spain. But no, how was it brought from Spain? No longhorn breed lives in Spain. Spanish breeds look completely different. The longhorn has roamed the deserts of Mexico and Texas before ever being domesticated by the Spaniards. That's a fact. They say they brought them, they let them loose, and then they re-domesticated them. And, you know, when they re-domesticated them, the horns got longer and only like 200, 300 years because they had to fend off coyotes. It says, okay, did you know the longhorn bull is also more drought and famine resistant than any Spanish breed? Meaning the longhorn bull can go longer periods without food and water than any Spanish breed. But they brought it from Spain, right? This is a fact. You can research everything I'm saying. Also, no one knows the exact origin of the longhorn. Some say it's a hybrid between two Spanish breeds. Again, no proof of that because the longhorn does not exist in Spain. It would have been a hybrid over there first before it became a hybrid over here. Think. Also, others say natural selection caused the bull to evolve long horns within only 300 years to fend off wolves and mountain lions. The latter theory has major flaws. Let me explain the flaws. Why did the African water buffalo not evolve similar horns to fend off the greater variety of deadly predators in Africa? I mean, let's think about it realistically. The water buffalo of Africa has to deal with lions, leopards. It has to deal with crocodiles. It has to deal with African wild dogs and hyenas. While, you know, the longhorn bull of America just had to deal with coyotes, the occasional mountain lion. So with that being said, in only 300 years, it's going to get horns like that. But in Africa, the water buffalo's horns has looked the same for probably since they were created by Yah. So who knows, man? But evidence is really pointing to this being an indigenous animal. And I already showed you a petroglyph of this animal on a rock in Colorado. Now let's talk about the sheep or the ram. There are many types of sheep in Western North America. And here they go. Here's their range, their natural distribution. Now, what I also want to show you is this. This is evidence of domestication. How is it evidence of domestication? Well, we know that this is not a picture of wild sheep, because wild sheep would not be very comfortable around a human being just being out in the middle of them. Also, this human being looks like he has some type of coat on. That probably, and look at his horns. Look at the top of his head. That's a bison horns, meaning he just killed a bison. He has his horns as a helmet to keep his head warm, and it looks like he has a coat of bison wool to keep his body warm. Okay, which means he has to stand outside in the cold, which means he's a shepherd, which means he's watching his flock. Shepherds had to keep themselves warm at all times, so he's a shepherd. He's not hunting. The person right here is hunting. This guy is probably a bandit trying to steal his sheep from him. This is evidence of domestication. As you can see in this image, the sheep look very woolly because they were domesticated at the time, so they're gonna have excess wool. By the way, this rock petroglyph is found in Utah. Now let's talk about the goat. Where do the goats live? They live in the mountains of Western North America and as well as Canada, which is also a part of Western North America, but it's not the Holy Land. In 1 Samuel 24:2, it says, Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Yasharal and went to seek David and his men upon the rocks of the wild goats. So the children of Israel came into contact with this. These things are huge, by the way. Huge. Also, we also had domesticated goats. And here's a picture that confirms that. As we can see, more evidence of domestication because they have shepherd's rods. And they'll tell us that they'll tell us that the American indigenous people did not have any form of domestication, but as you can see here, they have shepherd's rods. They're wearing a robe, and then in front of them there is some type of goat, some small goat. I know it's not a sheep because it's too small. If it is a sheep, then it's a little lamb. But regardless, evidence of domestication. And look, this is what happened. You see all these bullet holes? It was shot. The Europeans saw this and they started to shoot this because they was trying to hide something. What were they trying to hide? They were trying to hide this beautiful scene so the world cannot understand true American history. And if we want to look at the entire image here, you can see that above this, there's a big crack in the rock and there's a horse pulling something. Is it a chariot? Do they shoot that off because they don't want us to know that there's a chariot? They successfully shot that part off. Now let's talk about the ass. Now this is a very funny one because they'll tell you, look, they think we're stupid, and for the most part, we are because we fall for it. But they tell us that the ass or the donkey was brought to America from Spain, but the American donkey looks absolutely nothing like a Spanish donkey. If you look at a picture of the wild burro of Western North America, you'll see that they all have this black stripe down the shoulder blade. See these black stripes down the shoulder blade? But guess what? The Spanish donkey, they don't have that. They lack it. Here's an image of a man, a petroglyph of a man upon the back of some animal, which is probably either a donkey or a horse. And then this is a petroglyph of a man pulling either a donkey or a horse, but I'm going to say it's a donkey for this one. because the size comparison shows me that it's a little too small to be a horse, and this one is a little too fat to be a horse. So that's why I think those are donkeys. Now, when we look at the wild burro and the wild horse territories of North America, they're concentrated in Western North America. If the Spanish brought them, and we know that Spain, the first place they went in North America was not Western North America. The first place they actually went was the Florida area, the Mississippi area, the Alabama area, the Louisiana area, and even the East Texas area. Shouldn't there be horses all over there too? But no, there's only horses in Western North America. There's no donkeys in the South. The South, what we consider the South, that's the first place the Spanish set foot on. But guess what? There's no horses there. There's no wild horses there. Why not? Because wild horses live in Western North America. That's their environment. That's where they live. Now we're talking about the palmer worm and cankerworm. Now this is an insect larvae that King James allowed his translators to add in the scripture. It was a newly discovered insect found in America. Now this is pretty interesting because King James, he had an interest in North America. He actually owned land in North America. Did you know Jamestown was named after King James? And did you know that certain insects and animals, were brought from America back to England so that King James can look at them, observe them, and, be amazed at new animals that were discovered. And two of these insects that he seen was the cankerworm and the palmerworm. He was very interested with these insects, and he even allowed them to be added as a translation into the Bible. Now, the proper translation of, these Hebrew words probably are not really the cankerworm and the palmerworm. They're probably some type of locust or any random caterpillar that lives in Western North America. However, the cankerworm and palmerworm, they live in Eastern North America, around where the 13 colonies were. Now, that's how I know the cankerworm and the palmerworm probably were not the actual word that should have been used in Hebrew, but I just find it funny that King James himself added an American insect to the scriptures. Why would he do that? Was there a reason to do that? Because King James knew that the Holy Land was not in Europe, so he was probably tired of adding all those European animals to the scripture. So he probably said, okay, look, we have the opportunity to add an American insect or an American animal, so let's do it. He must have known that America was the Holy Land, or that the Holy Land was in America. And I'm going to show you evidence in another part of this video that proves that Europeans did in fact know for a fact that the Holy Land was here. And we'll get to that in a minute when we get to the historical aspect of this presentation. However, first what we're going to look at is the cankerworm. The cankerworm, the definition. The caterpillar, it says, the caterpillar of a North American moth that has wingless females. North American. The palmer worm, the larva of a Tanid moth, the Comerus liguella of the eastern United States. Okay, so again, these are American insects. American. Why did King James say, oh, let's put that in the Bible? Come on, guys, you got to think. So now we're in the geology section, and we're going to end this video right here because I already know that this video is extremely long. Part 2 is coming soon.